Good morning. Welcome to one of the first walkthroughs that I'm going to do here for y'all for being part of my Patreon. I kind of thought about long and hard about which divination tool that I wanted to introduce first, and I realized I need to go completely back to the beginning. And what do I mean by that is I'm going to introduce you to Sawyer's Path as a whole, and then how it evolved into the tiles, starting so this is gonna encompass the Sawyer's Path tarot tiles and the Sawyer's Lenormand tiles because they kind of both became one at the same time. So what this is this is my first, this is just a box that I had wood burned that has some of my most prized treasures right now. So I'm going to show you what's in the box. So when I first drew Sawyer's Path Tarot, I know I have mentioned this in previous things. I had no idea about deck creation. I had no idea about how that worked, and this was before I had found a printer, and then I had finally found a printer. So in that interim, I still wanted to experience the cards. So what I did was I just uploaded my files to moo.com, and on Moo you can print business cards, which is what these are. I got the glossy ones, and you can print as many images as you want in a pack. So I was able to do my entire deck. Some of the cut lines aren't correct because it's going to cut out some of the stuff, but this was my actual first tarot deck. And I mean, this little guy cost me probably like over $50, maybe up to $80 because of all the different images. And then of course I had to get like a couple, one for my mom, one for me. And then I was sending out the card images with orders at that time to entice people to get excited about my deck. So this is the very first Sawyer's Path Tarot deck. Look at how little bitty it is. I mean, you can see it next to the Sawyer's Lenormand, and there it is. So then I had gotten my sample sheets from Shuffled Ink, because Shuffled Ink was who I first used to print Sawyer's Path Tarot. And this is a wrap that I had made back then. This was way before I met Jenna. This was, she changed my life with tarot bags after that point, and I don't make them anymore. So this is the first real print production because they had sent me the print sheet. So when you order a hard proof from your printer, more often than not, it's not going to be cut. So you can see on here, you can see the black lines is where I just cut on the lines. I didn't even take into account any bleeds or anything like that. So this was my very first professional version of Sawyer's Path, and I just cut them, and then I didn't have an edge trimmer, so the edges are not all perfect, but this is the very first deck. You can see it's bigger than most cards. Let me grab one to show you. So this is, you can see how much actually gets trimmed off when you do like a full bleed card. So this much on the edges gets trimmed. So on here, this was my full drawing. So why am I showing you the decks? You might be asking as I keep walking away. Because my creativity never stops at just the cards, right? So here's those. Oh, and so that's Sawyer's Path deck. And then you can see it's really snug. I gotta force that in there. And so when I drew my Lenormand deck, I knew I was going to use Shuffled Ink again because that's who I had used for my Sawyer's Tarot cards, my Sawyer's Path cards. And so I didn't need to order a hard copy of Shuffled Ink, but I still wanted to see how the cards would read together. So what I did was I had printed out all of my line drawings and laminated them. So this is my first workable Lenormand deck based off of Sawyer's Lenormand. And as you can see, they're slippery, but the fun thing about Lenormand is you could literally just write the numbers 1 through 36 on pieces of paper and have a Lenormand deck that will work. So the backs, they don't have any images on them, but they have all of my line drawings. So this was to satisfy the desire to see how the cards worked before I had the actual card deck. And I can't remember at what point I made the first tile sets. But I do know that it was because I was making these jewelry pieces, and of course I don't have one of the jewelry pieces with me. But basically, the jewelry, I'm gonna get ahead of myself, but the jewelry was on these little, like these little tiny resin things, and then I would wire wrap them so you could wear them as a pendant. And on one side I would put like one card, and on the other I put another card. But in these, they're double-sided. But that's getting a tiny bit ahead of myself. So when I started learning a little bit more about Lenormand, I realized that it's meant to be seen as a grand tableau, right? So with the grand tableau, you put out all 36 cards and you can read them all together. Well, because I was playing around with that size, and it's funny because I look at these sizes and I used to think that they were bigger, and now I realize just how small they actually are. But I made a full Lenormand set because I wanted to be able to lay them out like a grand tableau. And my creativity, and so these are a prime example of some of the early troubleshooting. I don't even know if it's gonna zoom in. But see how like this giant, there's bubbles, all this speckling is just bubbles. And when working in resin molds, when you put a piece of paper down in the mold, you have no way of really dictating how to get all those bubbles out. Or at least, I mean, I know a lot more now. I could probably do it a little bit clearer now. But at this time, this was all part of my experimenting. They're wonky. I was using bad resin, so they're yellowy. I still love them though. They're very, this is, in all their flaws, these are the very first tarot tiles, but these were Lenormand tiles. I committed to doing a Lenormand because it's a lot easier to do 36, and at the time, mind you, I only had a mold that would allow me to do maybe 4 of these at a time. So of course I had to buy more molds and, you know, go from there. But it took probably close to a week to make this full set. That was before I realized before I learned how to make my old molds. Once I learned how to make my own molds, I was like, okay, I can do them for, you know, the whole tarot deck. But again, these are far from perfect. They have tons of bubbles, not as many, but they still have them. They're not as thick. They're, you know, they're perfectly flawed. But again, like I said, they are the beginning of what we sell and have now, and what many of you have welcomed into your home. I mean, I can see it. I doubt you can see it if I get it right in the light. There's just so many bubbles in these. You know, it's almost like a starry sky in the background, but it's bubbles. I assure you, it's bubbles. Not that I'm a perfectionist, but I wanted to try and figure out other ways to do it. But oh, so I also have to show you, because these were the inevitable conclusion of my prototyping, but I do have a couple other things that I played around with at that time. And since this is a show and tell, and it's kind of like to let you know where my head was at and what I was doing and all that. So these came first, I believe. Get them out of the way. So this lovely pouch is by Moonlit Fae. Look at how fun this is. So we can open this up. This really shows you how bad the resin was. So this was when I was learning which cards went with which zodiac sign. And so this is Virgo, and then in here I put some, you know, it's an earth sign. If you can see that, there's a little earth symbol that I cut and put in there, and then I have a hemimorphite bead, which is what I had kind of paired with the hermit. And then here it is in, you know, so it's like this little chunky crystallized piece. But again, and what's neat about the resin is when you look at it kind of from the side, it mirrors back up what it is. If I was really smart, I would have done that backwards so I could see it from this angle. But I was just playing around, you know, and I didn't do the full set. I only did the majors on these. And again, so it was, here's death in here. And I put bloodstone as the card to go, or as the stone to go with death. I'm sure I have it all written down as to why I chose those stones, but the meanings went with it. I put some glitter in there because playing with resin, you want to add everything to the mix. Now I would layer it differently, but these are a little clearer. There's still a lot of bubbles. I think I was getting a little better with the bubble stuff, but it's also the molds allow, you know, there's still a lot of bubbles. Sagittarius with temperance. So, you know, the paper is floated up. This is moonstone with high priestess. You know, so this was like, these were good, big, and chunky. I don't think I ever sold any of these. I think they were more just my own personal altar pieces. But you can see, like, see how yellow this is? That is cheap resin. So this is the resin that you can get from Michael's, from craft stores that, you know, I'm not knocking them. They're really good to learn with. The resin I use now it's called art resin. It's not the only high quality one out there, but it's expensive, which is also why, you know, a lot of resin pieces are expensive. I'm talking like, I did the math yesterday. It's about $1 an ounce, you know. And then if you mess something up, that's just dollars of, you know. So there's a lot that goes into resin play. And anybody, if you've ever played with resin, you'll be nodding your head as you're watching this. But the thing with cheap resin is over time with oxidization, with oxidizing, it turns yellow. So see that yellow, that ambery look? I mean, you may like it. It gives it an antique-y feel, but it's gonna continue to yellow. And that is just not high quality resin. So there's those. And then, so this was the precursor to the tarot tile set as a whole. And I know I said that before, but that really is because then these came about and I was like, okay, I can do the major arcana again. And these I did sell a couple sets of. They didn't have these giant earth, air, fire, and water signs, but because I made those for myself, but they had like a gem with them. So the whole premise was with this was, you know, whichever cards show face up, you know, so we have like the Empress, Strength, and then I have, you know, these, and if I was like, okay, there we go. So the 14 of air, so we know that's the King of Swords, right? And in these I put like, so this has, I guess that's raw citrine in here. And then this has carnelian, this one's blue kyanite, and this one has some malachite. But each one of these stones has, see how these are all little candy molds. So here's the world, and again, so I wrote like the world on it, and then it's got the Saturn symbol, and then it's an air sign. Oh no, that's not an air sign. It's a earth sign is the big one down here, but that's just the card has those. And then I put blue goldstone in here. I have them written down. I don't remember why I put that. Like, okay, so the Fool, we've got Uranus and the fire sign, and then, but I've since learned since I've made these that the Fool is also aligned with air, but I think I did fire because of Uranus. And then I put Fool's Gold, you know, and then I think that's a little, yeah, that's a little tourmalinated quartz. I can't say that word. The Magician, I put labradorite with some moonstones in there. And then it's got its symbols. And this was before I realized that Pluto was associated with judgment. So that's the only one that doesn't actually have a correspondence. Again, this is all part of my learning process. This is how my brain remembers things, is by making these creative tools out of it. Whether I continue to use them or not, you know, this is the High Priestess look, a little moonstone decided to fall down underneath. And, you know, that's some of the surprises of demolding resin. You never know what's gonna happen. Again, cheap resin, see how yellow it is. But this was like the first set of tarot tiles. I did sell some of these. So if you were one of the lucky few that got one of these, like, I guess it's a collector's item. Because I don't make these anymore, and no, I will not continue to make them because I'm, like all my creations, I evolve. Okay, so that's those. So you're seeing this theme of bubbles, right? I was talking with a few of my gamer friends, and I remember this one client of mine. He's really into board games, really into all sorts of like, just like, not like game pieces is the word I'm looking for. I was talking to him about it, and I remember asking him, like, do they make anything that's like what I'm trying to make? And we were brainstorming. He's like, I don't think so. And I had remembered like Scrabble tiles that people would make jewelry out of. And so then my brain goes, because I wanted to be able to control the bubbles. And the only way I could control the bubbles is if I had access to the face. So we'll do this. So this is the first set of Lenormand tiles. This is literally the very first set of tiles I've ever made. I hand burnt the backs, so they are completely unperfect. They took me over 9 hours to create. I first drew it with pencil, and then I, hand burnt them. These led to us wanting to get lasers so that we can like now do what you see today, which is, there's a big difference. They've got a nicer border. Like these are cute, but they were, because of the way that the edges are and everything, like resin would be everywhere. It was such a learning process. So you can see they didn't change that much. They just glowed up, as people like to say right now. So this is the evolution of that. But there are people who have these first sets, and if you do, those are definitely collector's items, because I do not make them with my hand burning anymore. And those used to come in boxes like this, and this was when we first started learning to laser engrave them. So you can see they're still different. We still do a lot by hand with them. We still do all the resin by hand, all the sticking by hand, the burning. The only thing that the machine does is cut and engrave. And we create the boxes now by hand because this took a long time to make. And most of you put them in Moonlight Fae bags. And my whole thing is the box that it comes in is just for transport. So like here's the, it's a Pocket of Piers box because I don't remember what I did with my box for these. But this is my first set of tarot tiles. I keep pulling the full, so I guess we're on the good start of the journey. And these, again, they were all hand burned. And there is some magic that goes with creating your own tools because you imbue it, your energy into these. For me, this was all about learning. This was all about learning the correspondences. I still don't know them 100%, but I can tell like that if I look at this Saturn in Taurus, I know right away that this is a pentacle because Taurus is an earth sign and Saturn. And then I think it's Taurus, I think it's earlier on. No, it's later, of course. See, I still don't know. So much for learning it, but this is the whole reason that these exist is because they were supposed to be like little mini flashcards, like that. And so now we have the better version using better resin, better, better stuff. And so the things are more uniform and they're still the same size. They're just a little bit more professional, I guess, looking. I love them. I love them in all their forms, but the stickers that we use now are way higher quality. The resin that we use is way higher quality. Those earlier sets, I was still using the old resin, but since I wasn't using so much, you can't really see the layering of the, you can't really see the yellowing, excuse me. I'm trying to see if I can find, it's gonna be hard to do because they're not in order. Oh, here we go, okay. The image quality, you can just see, this is the newer deck, so this is like all tiles now are made with Sawyer's Path updated, and you can just see that the clarity is better than the older ones. But So the reason for the show and tell was just basically to show you the steps and the process and the prototyping that have gone through in order to get to what we make today and the things that we create. And even though we make these now, it doesn't mean we're going to be making them forever. So that's just how my brain works. I might come up with something different along the line and be like, you know what, I'm retiring these tiles because now I'm doing this, or it's how it is. But the reason that creative divination sessions exist, the tarot casting boards exist, any of that stuff exists is because of these, is because of this play with resin. It's because of the cards initially being created and me just wanting to dive fully into a practice. So I guess the whole purpose of this video is to introduce you to a little glimpse in the behind the scenes of my world. And you know, I'm really excited to do another video next month. I think I'm gonna just start in the beginning again. Maybe I'll do a poll, see which casting board you wanna see me walk through. And then we'll go from there. So I thank you so much for being here with this little show and tell. And I hope it gives you a little bit of clarity and insight. And I also apologize if it has you desiring stuff I no longer make. And I guess that's just the whole purpose of being a creator, is to be able to retire things and not be bound by them anymore. But for all of you who are here, I thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.